Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you for Reason to Resist from Montreal, Canada on December 30th, 2024. On November 27th, the ceasefire agreement was signed by Israel, Lebanon, and 5 mediating countries, including the United States. Israel and Hezbollah began fighting on the 8th of October, 2023, and on October 1st, 2024, Israel invaded Lebanon. The agreement mandates a 60-day halt to hostilities during which Israel must withdraw its forces from southern Lebanon, and Hezbollah must withdraw its forces to north of the Litani River. A 5-country monitoring panel led by the United States is supposed to oversee the implementation of this ceasefire, with 5,000 Lebanese troops to be deployed to ensure compliance. The agreement does not preclude either Israel or Lebanon from acting in self-defense, but Israeli and Lebanese officials disagree with what that entails. Since the ceasefire went into effect, Israeli attacks on Lebanon have killed at least 3 civilians, and there have been reports of dozens of ceasefire violations by Israeli forces. The ceasefire is set to expire in less than 1 month, a few days after Donald Trump assumes the U.S. presidency on January 20th. What will happen then? Now here to examine this question with me is Hadi Hoteit. Hadi is a journalist for the Lebanese media outlet Al-Mayadeen. He has accompanied me to South Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley during my trips to Lebanon during the past year. And on Reason to Resist, we've interviewed Hadi before, including in October during my most recent visit to Lebanon. Hadi, thank you for coming back on to Reason to Resist.
Thank you for having me, Dimitri.
So Hadi, let's begin with the question of compliance with the ceasefire. Since the ceasefire came into effect a little more than a month ago, has Israel more or less complied with it, or has it repeatedly violated the ceasefire?
Of course, Israel, since the beginning of the ceasefire agreement, violated the ceasefire continuously. So it doesn't make any sense to count violations. And some people are arguing which number is correct, like 300, 500 or 1,000 violations. We're talking here about continuous violation of the agreement, and the Israelis basically are still acting in a certain way that is different, of course, than different from the way that they were, of course, attacking Lebanon before the ceasefire agreement. But right now, the attack against many villages, and also the attacks and the aggressions against other parts of Lebanon that aren't near the borders is continuing, and this is the situation right now. Just I need to update something you mentioned, and it's related to my personal information. I am working right now as a correspondent in South Lebanon for Press TV, and I not anymore working for Al-Mayadeen.
My apologies. Thank you for clarifying.
No, because when you were here in Lebanon, I was at Al-Mayadeen, so I'm just fixing it.
So could you give us a sense of, when you say attacks, are you talking about drone strikes? Are you talking about bombardment by Israeli warplanes? Are you talking about artillery? Are you talking about ground incursions, shelling? What kinds of attacks?
All of this.
All of these things.
Basically, until now, the number of martyrs after the ceasefire in 30 days have reached it's about 30 civilians until now.
Wow.
These civilians, some of them was martyred in border villages, like civilians who returned to their villages, and then they suffered attacks from the Israelis, like artillery shells, drone strikes, and also sometimes heavy airstrikes. And the number reached 30 martyrs after the ceasefire agreement. Also, some of these attacks, some of these aggressions reached a place. For example, one of the attacks happened next to the place we were staying, if you remember, on Safi mountain. Do you remember? It's one of the highest mountains in South Lebanon. And this is more than 40 kilometers away from the border. From the nearest border with occupied Palestine, and it was attacked by heavy airstrikes. Also, another attack happened in the village of Taraya in Beqa' Valley. It's next to Baalbek, where also we went together with our friend Laith, and this was basically this wasn't the strike that the deepest strike inside the Lebanese territories, the Lebanese geography. I mean, also other strikes happened in the eastern mountains, mountain chain of Lebanon, the eastern side, which is basically on the borders with Syria, and other strikes also happened on border crossings with Syria in the north and in the east. Of course, what differs from before the ceasefire agreement, and let's call it the agreement because it's not a ceasefire, it's like a change of how war is conducted. The Israelis are no more attacking Dahi, are no more attacking central Beirut, are no more attacking cities inside Lebanon. Also, the attacks against villages are much less than they were during the 66 days. Basically the main war that was happening. And right now, also the resistance is not responding.
So that was my next question.
Yes.
As far as you can tell, there have been no counterattacks by the resistance since the so-called ceasefire went into effect on November 27th?
Basically, there was one response by the resistance. The resistance fired 2 missiles against an Israeli position inside occupied Palestine after the third violation of the ceasefire. This was the second or third day after the ceasefire. But from that point until now, the resistance decided not to use any kind of military capabilities in responding to any kind of violations, and decided also to keep itself committed to the ceasefire conditions, to the basically whatever were the conditions, and the resistance is only relying on diplomatic capabilities of the Lebanese state, and also the UNIFIL and the United Nations intervention with the international committee that was formed to basically to take care of how the ceasefire is going. The resistance is still abiding by the rules of the ceasefire and waiting basically until the 60 days period that was given for the Israeli forces to withdraw completely from Lebanon, and also for Hezbollah to withdraw its forces to the north of Litani, or basically its military capabilities to the north of Litani until that moment after 60 days, which basically from now it's.
Before we get to the expiration of the ceasefire, I just wanted to ask you about this restraint that the resistance has shown. Why do you think, in light of the nature and number of Israel's violations of the ceasefire, why do you think the resistance has been so restrained in responding? I mean, historically, the UN forces and the Lebanese government have not been able to restrain Israel, and it doesn't seem like they're able to do that now. It seems odd that the resistance would not retaliate more than it did on that one occasion to these countless ceasefire violations.
I'm analyzing. I believe that there are two important benefits for the resistance when it comes to the to abiding by the rules of the ceasefire. Basically, the resistance needed after the heavy casualties on the first days of the war, not on the last phase of the 66 days war. But the first strikes were very strong, were very heavy, and caused many casualties. Actually, we're talking about thousands of casualties. We're talking about, of course, the pager attacks, and then the talkie-walkies attacks, and then the first air strike campaigns, the campaign, the air campaign that was basically consisted of more than 1,600 airstrike in less than 24 hours. And it caused also like more than 1,500 casualty in one day between wounded and martyrs. So, and also many capabilities of the resistance were damaged during this war, and this needs time to be basically rebuilt and corrected. And this is why I wasn't expecting a ceasefire from Israel. And when the Israelis agreed on a ceasefire, they gave the resistance this chance to, now you can reassess your capabilities, retrain some of your members. The injured ones can go to hospitals. You can also send new fighters to the places on the border if you want. When it wasn't very easy. Now it was happening during the war, but of course it wasn't an easy thing to do. And I wasn't expecting the ceasefire for this. The other thing is that politically inside Lebanon, because you should remember, and our audience, that the Resistance Act as Lebanese resistance also, and it has its calculations related to the Lebanese politics and Lebanese situation. And of course, it is basically a Lebanese resistance. So the resistance needs to regain another narrative after what happened and after the Gaza, supporting Gaza narrative. Because, right now, after 60 days, if the Israelis did not withdraw from Lebanon and from the Lebanese territories, the few kilometers that they are still occupying, and if they did not stop their attacks and their aggressions and their violations of the ceasefire, the resistance will have full right, according to the Lebanese law, to the international law, and to the ceasefire agreement, to continue its military operations against the Israelis to make them withdraw by force. And this is very important for the resistance. Now, some people think that because it's a resistance and it's being accused of being a terrorist resistance, that it should act like, an outlaw. But I think you, Dimitri, especially, you know how much the resistance here in Lebanon had laws. And very, so for example, you remember after like 1 year of coming to Lebanon, more than 6 or 5 times, maybe, or 6 times, I can't remember. I believe, I still remember when you once told me, and this was on your latest visit during the war, like, why this is the first time I see a weapon with Hezbollah fighter. If you remember this, when we saw Hezbollah fighter.
So people know the background of this, Hadi. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
What happened was it was my 5th trip to Lebanon in the past since the beginning of 2023, and my 4th since the beginning of the genocide in Gaza. And you and I were in Dahya, and that was on my last trip in October. And for the very first time, I saw someone carrying an automatic weapon. I had not seen that at any prior time, including when we were in the border areas in the deep south, within...
And during wartime.
during wartime and within a
few meters.
Israel, yeah, even a few meters. So that was quite striking to me that in the middle of the war, I had not seen anybody carrying an automatic weapon until my last trip. So I'm sorry, that's the background. You were talking about the laws of the resistance.
Because the resistance has its standards and its laws, and the resistance tries to always keep up with the fact that the work of the resistance is organized. Now this, if you want to ask me, this has its positive and negative effects on the work of the resistance, but still this is how the resistance works, and I'm describing how it works. So the resistance right now needs to regain the full support of the Lebanese people, as much as they are interested in abiding by the laws, because now it will have the full right to attack, because it was debated by the Lebanese, and the Lebanese aren't all supporting the resistance, that whether we should support Gaza or not, get into war with Israel because of Gaza or not. You have always these questions. So now it's gonna be a different thing. Although of course I'm not agreeing on the the arguments of basically the right-wing Lebanese parties.
Right. And so let's get to the I think what we can all agree is probably the key question, which is what is likely to happen when this ceasefire ends in late January. Is it obviously, Hadi, it's difficult to predict given the volatility of the situation.
Yes.
And what Trump will do is going to obviously be a significant factor in terms of how this all unfolds. And he himself can be quite unpredictable. But based on what you've seen and what you've heard, what is your best prediction as to what will transpire when this ceasefire formally comes to an end in late January?
From what I know, and I don't know what Trump is going to do, but I know what usually how the resistance thinks, how the people of South Lebanon, and this is more important, how they think, how the people of Lebanon who supports the resistance think and feel, and how they historically acted in similar situations. I can say that if the 60 days period ended, and maybe there is quite a good possibility that the ceasefire agreement will still be valid until the last day of the 60 days. Why? Because I told you the resistance benefits from this, and it's not actually bad for the resistance to have longer time to be able to fix what needs to be fixed and rest and do what it wants to do. But after this, we have many possibilities. The first one is that Israel withdraw from South Lebanon and decide that what happened is enough. And also this will make Hezbollah also keep abiding by the ceasefire agreement. And this will be, maybe for some people, the best case scenario, which means that no further military actions or war will happen. This has its own counter argument, because Israel is an expansionist entity. Israel does not leave any meter conquered by its army without a reason, without force. Israel always withdraw because of the fear of having casualties, or the fear of any kind of losses, politically or military. So if Israel was assessing that staying inside Lebanon will lead to a war of attrition, and will lead to another Afghanistan war, to another Iraq war for the Israelis, this will mean that they will withdraw after 60 days, because this also will be the best case scenario for them. They will put an end to their gains, and also decide to end their losses, and let's, as we say, go out of the table with what they have achieved until now, which is not a full victory, and we can discuss this later. If the 60 days period ends and Israel did not withdraw from South Lebanon, this will have two other scenarios. First, the resistance might still give a further chance to other means, like for the Lebanese army, for the diplomacy, for the international forces, to also to keep trying to make the Israelis withdraw, because this will also give the resistance more time and will make the point of the resistance clearer if the resistance decided to go to continue and keep the military actions going after this. This will make a stronger point for the resistance, that for the Lebanese people and for the international, if there were any kind of international powers or international opinion who is interested in who's right and wrong. So this is also a scenario that will mean that we will not see direct military operations immediately after the 60 days end. And there is the third scenario, which leads us to, of course, the fact of the resistance will keep and will return to carry out military operations against the Israeli forces that are based in South Lebanon, and decide to enter another war of liberation, like it was in the year 2000 and like the resistance did in year 2006, and will continue this operations until the liberation of the Lebanese lands, whatever were the Israeli responses for this war of liberation, because that's when the resistance will easily can say, I can't do anything other than this. I must liberate the land of South Lebanon and the land of Lebanon, and I must defend Lebanon. And if the Israelis are striking and returned, for example, to strike Beirut or strike Dahi in return of targeting a Merkava tank in Hujair Valley, for example, they can do this, but they will also suffer retaliation from the resistance, because the strategic weapons of the resistance, as you witnessed and we witnessed during the war and in the latest days of the war, especially the last Sunday, when hundreds of missiles, including strategic missiles, attacked Haifa and Tel Aviv in the same time, and Safad, and also the Carmel region in Israel at the same time. And this was, I believe, the largest missile strikes that conducted by the resistance during the whole war, and it was conducted in the last Sunday before the ceasefire. So this means that the resistance still have strategic capabilities.
I remember counting in the 24 hours leading up to the ceasefire, there were over 50 reports from the resistance of military operations.
Exactly.
By far the biggest number that I had seen over the prior year. I think the biggest number I'd seen before then was somewhere in the low 30s. In any case, let's talk for a moment about Syria. At the time when the ceasefire was entered into, did Hezbollah have military forces inside Syria? And if so, do we know approximately how many fighters were there and whether they've returned to Lebanon?
I don't have any kind of numbers here, but as I know, and this is from sources that are not secret. This is not a secret. You know, the people who go to Syria and come back to Syria are people from Lebanon. You can tell what's happening here. This is one characteristic of the popular resistance. You can't hide anything that is that's happening in a large scale. I believe that there were many thousands of fighters inside Syria. Maybe few thousands of fighters, maybe 2,000, 3,000 fighters. I'm telling you, this is not information, but this is as far as I know, as a journalist who is following the situation. So yes, there were at least hundreds of fighters inside the Syrian territories, based in many cities. Most of them were based near the borders with Lebanon, in Qusayr region and in Homs and in Qalamun region, and others were based in Damascus near the place where it was a headquarters for the Iranian consultants and the allies of the Syrian government. And I believe some of them was also in Aleppo and in near the Russian base in Tartus.
And so presumably the return of those hundreds or even thousands of fighters to Lebanon would have strengthened to some degree the resistance forces in Lebanon. They would help to replace
basically, and we haven't seen, for many reasons, we haven't seen very strong actions from the Syrian side during the 66 days of war against the resistance in Lebanon. The role of the Syrian government and the Syrian army, and also the Hezbollah forces who were stationed in Syria during the war, was to support the resistance. And this support basically now has no way to continue after what happened in Syria. So the only logical result of this, the only logical consequence, will be the return of these fighters to Lebanon. Yes, this will mean that these fighters will be available, but as I told you before, or maybe I wanted to say it, the resistance wasn't lacking people. It wasn't lacking fighters. There were, and I know this, that there were thousands of fighters who were asking to go to the borders, but the resistance was banning them from going there, because, as I told you, this is an organized resistance. They know how much fighters needs to be stationed in the border villages, no unnecessary casualties happens because of, when you have lots of fighters in the same area, even random fire can cause lots of casualties. So the resistance wasn't lacking for manpower, but now, of course, when the fighters returned from Syria, we can say that these fighters will recompensate for the losses that the resistance endured or suffered during this war.
Okay, so let's talk about weaponry. We've talked about fighters. My understanding was that before the fall of the Bashar al-Assad government, that Iran was resupplying Hezbollah's forces by land through Syria, through Iraq and Syria. And the operating assumption of many observers is that now that what is described by Western governments as a terrorist organization, HTS, has seized power in Damascus.
No, they are progressive.
The inclusive terrorists. Yes.
Yeah, progressive political. I don't know, powers who are just happens to have some ISIS fighters among them.
That's correct. So that's what we're told. Presumably they, because they've said very clearly that they don't consider Israel to be the enemy. They consider Iran and Hezbollah to be the enemies. So presumably they're going to try to stop the flow of weapons through Syrian territory into Lebanon. Larry Johnson, the former CIA officer, gave an interview not too long ago in which he said, and this was after the fall of Assad, that he believed there was some prospect, he wasn't sure, but that Iran would find other ways to supply the resistance, including through smuggling routes that would cross Syria, but they would not be officially approved by the regime in Damascus. I have two questions for you about this. First of all, does the resistance in Lebanon have the capability to produce at least some of its missiles locally in Lebanon? And if so, what do we know about its production, its manufacturing capabilities, if anything? And the second thing is, do you think that Iran will find ways or is likely to find ways to continue supplying the resistance in Lebanon, notwithstanding the events in Syria?
According to Israeli media during the war, many types of missiles, especially the IRAMs, the improvised rocket-assisted munitions, that were fired against many positions on the borders and inside the the occupied lands of Palestine, and Kiryat Shmona and Shtula and other places. According to the Israelis, many of these missiles were produced inside Lebanon, even when the routes of weapon transfer between Iran and Lebanon and between Syria and Lebanon, because some of these weapons weren't only Iranians. Most of these weapons are Syrians, for your knowledge. Most of the missiles were produced in Syria, and some missiles, especially the strategic missiles, yes, these missiles were produced in Iran, and sometimes parts of them were produced in Iran, and other parts that are easier to produce were produced here in Lebanon. So this is, of course, this is according to Israeli media. I'm not saying that we should believe them in everything, but in this, because I don't have special information about weapon manufacturing. But as far as I know, lots of let's say the tactical weapons, the weapons used, the munitions and the weapons used as some ammo for the mortars and for I guess also Grad missiles. These missiles were produced in Lebanon. I don't know how much the scale of the production before the war, but yes, they were produced in Lebanon. Because they were produced in Lebanon, even if the factories were struck by the Israelis, we can say that the resistance should find an easy way, or not a very hard way, to regain the powers of the capabilities of producing these weapons inside Lebanon, which means that this will not be a very big problem for the resistance. Now, for strategic weapons, Yemen is a country that is suffering from a full blockade. You know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know that you can't send. You should know this. Because some of friends of us were trying to reach Yemen, and they were told that no one can enter Yemen. Not even you can't even send a cell phone to Yemen. So
I've been trying for months to get into Yemen. So
I know this.
Really different.
So you can't send anything to Yemen, but we have supersonic air defense missiles in Yemen that are striking MQ-9s like mosquitoes.
Right. They just took down the 17th, I believe, MQ
Reaper. Yes. And this is, this is one of the most important killer drone in the world. if it wasn't the most important and the most famous killer drone that is used by the U.S. Army. And this is huge. This is not an easy thing. This is not happening and did not happen anywhere in the world. Never happened.
Right.
We're talking about air defense capabilities that is able to strike the eye of the air power, the American air power, because without drones you have to rely only on satellites, and you know how much limited the satellites can be in comparison with drone capabilities in surveillance and monitoring, and in real-time surveillance and monitoring, and the flexibility of the information that can be gathered by drones. So, and we also are witnessing right now the Yemeni attacks against Tel Aviv that are happening with ultrasonic missiles. And, the Palestine 2 missile that resembles and is not just a copy, but it resembles, it's similar to another Iranian missile. So basically, I suppose that the technology was smuggled to Yemen, but the Yemenis are the ones who are producing most of this, most of the parts necessary to build this missile, and they have the brains and they have the technology to produce such advanced missile that many European countries cannot produce it right now, and also. Maybe some parts, maybe they are producing all of it, but I don't know. But maybe some parts are being smuggled, basically the smart warhead or the engine from Iran. That I'm saying maybe, but this will reduce the amount of things necessary to be smuggled to Yemen and to other countries, basically to Yemen or to Lebanon. This will reduce the size, the amount, and also the how much recurrent you need to send things, because most of the things are being produced domestically. What's happening in Yemen, there is no reason that we shall deny the possibility that it will happen in Lebanon, and even on a larger scale, because Lebanon is a country that is known for the capabilities of people to smuggle things.
Right.
So this, so we are, let me tell you a joke. In year 2009, I guess it was 2009, ship full of weapons was detected on the port of Tripoli. It was full of weapons and pistols and Kalashnikovs and personal weaponry. It wasn't like strategic missiles or something. And when the Lebanese army detected it, no one claimed it. Someone was trying to, some Lebanese party other than the resistance. Now I know who, but I won't say, because later, after some years, the intelligence revealed where the ship, what was carrying, which are thousands of pistols and thousands of Kalashnikovs, where it was headed. But so when nobody claimed that the ownership of this ship, guess who claimed that it was theirs? The resistance. So they came to say, oh, it's ours. And everyone knew that it's not for this, the resistance. But they said that, oh, yes, this is ours. And they took all the weapons.
Well, since nobody wanted them, I guess.
Yeah. So you can easily see how much such things happen in Lebanon. Right. If you were here, and maybe we could claim the ownership of the ship.
So I want to talk about...
yes, it's not only hilarious, but I'm here mentioning how much things here are not hard. Lebanon is a country that is full of weapons. Everyone here has a weapon, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. And also, it's a country that has lots of connection with Europe, with European ports, with African ports. You can find hundreds of routes that aren't monitored by the international, the Interpol or the US or the Israel. And I believe the resistance has its ways to smuggle weapons here to Lebanon. And as I said, that this is added to the fact that many, let's say, an important percentage of the arsenal of the resistance is still there. And the Israelis weren't able to destroy, I guess, more than 50, maybe 60% of some capabilities, maybe the strategic capabilities. We're talking about 50 to 60%, other capabilities even less than this.
So I want to talk to you about the refugee situation, Hadi. When I was on every trip that I took to Lebanon, at some point, oftentimes at more than one point, I saw camps where Syrian refugees were based, and they often struck me as being in very poor condition. The Syrian refugees in Lebanon struck me as being in great difficulty and barely hanging on. I mean, that was the sense that I had. And we've seen reports of Syrians returning to Syria since the fall of Assad. What have you seen in terms of the flow of Syrian refugees back into the country, into Syria from Lebanon? Has it happened on a large scale? Has it been a modest flow of refugees? And if so, why do you think we've seen this level of remigration back to Syria?
There were no important remigration back to Syria after the change of regime in Syria. The people who came from Syria, I guess, are more than the people who left Lebanon to Syria. And the people right now are still coming from Syria, not going there. The amount of people who are coming from Syria now is bigger than the amount of people who are leaving Lebanon to reach Syria. Maybe more than 120,000 Syrian went from Syria. They were displaced from Syria to Lebanon in the nearest weeks after the regime change. And I suppose that this is obvious. You know, you can return to the numbers that were published by the Lebanese authorities. And also you can do like I did. You can go to the crossings and see how people are, going. Of course, the Syrian people now are not, the Syrian people who are living in Syria are, lots of them is afraid of what's happening. And you can easily see how much volatile the situation is in Syria and how much it's not clear what's happening. If you were there and you weren't basically a supporter for HTS, you would never know if you were gonna be beheaded or not. That's it. That's the situation. I know this for friends of mine who at the first phases of the the regime change now, they decided to stay there. They aren't connected to Bashar al-Assad, and they were regular Syrians, but they weren't supported for HTS. So they stayed there. Now they are all trying to leave Syria, and some of them even reached Lebanon a few days ago, because they are seeing what's happening, and also they don't trust HTS, and they don't trust anyone who is saying that, oh, you should trust HTS, especially the international powers who are backing the new military directory of Syria. But we know that this is not valid. We know that that Julani or whoever who was controlling Syria right now cannot control hundreds, at least let's say thousands of militants who were described as terrorists by by most of Europe and most of the Western world, even. Not only by us, the Lebanese, who suffered from their attacks. Even in Dahieh, missiles were fired from nearby places on Dahieh during the Syrian revolution.
You're talking about missiles being fired from Syrian territory.
No, from Lebanon. They smuggled some Katyusha rockets to Lebanon, and they fired them from Mount Lebanon against Dahieh many times.
You're referring to fighters of HTS?
It was basically Nusra fighters, which later became HTS, Jabhat al-Nusra, which later became HTS. It was rebranded, or ISIS fighters. And mostly, yes, they were HTS. They were Nusra fighters. They were led by the same Julani guy.
Right. So I've seen reports. It's hard to get a sense of how reliable these reports are, but of sectarian acts, provocations, violence that is targeting non-Sunni communities in Syria. For example, there was a report.
You shouldn't say not Sunni, because also Sunni people are being targeted based on political directions.
So I'm just referring to what I've seen here in social media and so forth. First, just to give an example,
yes,
the Christmas tree was burned down by masked militants. I believe it was in Hama or Homs, and this provoked a protest in Damascus, in the Christian part of Damascus.
These were the Turkmenistanis rebels.
Right. Now, not even Syrian. So
and in other occasion, they were the Uzbekistanis rebels.
So what kind of reports have you seen since the fall of Assad of violence by, not necessarily just targeting Druze or Christians or Alawites, but even against Sunnis by these HTS militants and their allies? What kind of reports have you seen that you regard as credible?
Now, the most important credible thing to rely on is the fact that tens of thousands of Syrians are right now fleeing Syria to other countries after the revolution. So this is the most credible reports that, by numbers, that show us how insecure the Syrian people feel after the HTS took control of the government. That's first. Second, we are seeing videos, many videos of basically violence based on political orientation, or based on sometimes sectarian identity, and sometimes it was also related to the regional clashes. Some regions have problems with other regions in Syria. These violence acts are dangerous because they are related to retaliation and retaliatory actions that are being done by the rebels or by the people who now control the government in Syria. And this means that it's not clear where are the limits of this retaliation. What will be the limit of this retaliation? Will they kill and behead only the officers of the army? Will they attack? Because they are attacking regular soldiers sometimes in Tartus, and this happened, and other places it happened also. So it's not only the officers. And what if they decided to kill the officers? You have thousands of officers, at least thousands, and if not tens of thousands of Syrian officers who were serving in the Syrian army until the last moment. Will they also be killed? How about the police? How about the judges, the 4 judges who were killed 5 days or 6 days ago in north of Syria? Judges. Now, yes, they might be affiliated with the regime, Assad's government, but how is this going to develop? Are they going to kill all the judges? Are they going to, for example, how are they going to deal with people who took responsibilities, political responsibilities, and governmental responsibilities during the last years of the regime? All of these questions makes the situation very dangerous for anyone who is thinking and or afraid of being targeted by the new government in Syria, because when retaliation starts, it's very hard to control it. Very, very hard to control it.
Yes, there was a report, I believe it was December 26th, that 14 members of the new Syrian police were killed in an ambush by forces loyal to Assad in Tartus.
That was correct, actually. That was I asked a friend that if this was correct, and he confirmed it. We're not talking about let's say members or fighters related to the Assad regime, but we are talking more about people who are against the new government.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that these police officers who were killed had gone to this area in order to arrest somebody. Is that the case?
Yeah, they were trying to arrest someone, and they got ambushed by the basically it's Alawite fighters. Right. And right now we can guess that Alawites will be conducting military operations on personal, on small scale. But this will mean that the new government will have a big problem with these communities, because there was a scenario where the new government do not enter the Alawite areas and leave its rule to the people of the area. They to have some kind of self-governance, but related to the government in Damascus. And this did not happen. This was the best case scenario for Damascus government, because would have made the people of these areas abiding by the rules of the Damascus government to a certain extent. Now, I believe that the situation is heading to the other direction.
Now, on a related note, a couple of days ago, there was an uproar in Syria because the newly appointed head of women's affairs made comments suggesting a certain level of intolerance for feminism within the country. She said, addressing herself to all of the country's religious community, she said, quote, that women should not go beyond the priorities of their God-given nature, and they must, quote, know their educational role in the family. Under Assad, certainly relative to other countries in the region like Saudi Arabia, women were treated relatively well. What is your expectation, based on what you've seen thus far, about how this new regime in Damascus is likely to approach the question of equality of women?
Can you yeah, how to anticipate this, how to be able to think about it. We have the it's either we study how these people think, and this will lead us, of course, to a place where uh, we will have basically um, let's say a picture of how it's gonna be, how the government is gonna deal with women rights in Syria. We also have the Afghani experience. We have Afghanistan. We have also the Pakistani areas controlled by jihadi Salafi jihadis. And you know how the women rights are going there. Now, I should mention that yes, Islam has its own way of dealing with the of women rights, because it has a different system of values, a system of values that is different from the Western system of values. But I guess maybe you went to many Islamic cities, and you went to Iran, for example. You came here to Lebanon, and you have seen how women here have full freedom in publicly and in their houses. Women here can work, they can do whatever they want,
Yeah.
basically.
I just pause there to give
So
you an
in
example.
Syria, yeah, I know. I need to say this now. In
Sure.
Syria, women are known for being, for enjoying their modern lifestyle, and Syria was not was basically since many decades, no Islamic government was governing Syria. And I believe that it's going to be very hard for the Syrian people to abide by the laws and rules of the new Salafi government, and the kind of, let's say, uh, code of conduct that they will have, because I have seen videos of people getting who got beaten because of they were smoking publicly. Now I don't know where does this come from, but this will give you an idea of how things won't be easy to anticipate. Like, well, okay, well, people are smoking in public on the streets, and they aren't like, they don't have to pay something, but they are simply beaten in the street. They got
Yes. Yeah.
so you can never guess what's gonna happen. But I can easily say that if the HTS wanted to make a new Afghanistan in Syria, this will be impossible, because this will lead to a social revolution, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just going to say that when I was in Qatar earlier this year, which of course is closely allied with the United States and is home to the largest U.S. military base in the region. I repeatedly saw women, 3-4 women, walking in a single file behind a man all the time. This was a common occurrence in Qatar. I never saw that once in Lebanon. Maybe it happens in some remote areas. I didn't see it, and I didn't see it once when I went to Damascus.
It's allowed by Islamic laws, but yes, in Lebanon it's rare to find it, because women have also their own way of thinking. Even in Islam, a woman can accept or cannot accept to have a second, to her man to have a second wife.
Right.
So if in Islam it's the case many times that, okay, you want to marry another woman, we can get divorced, and this is what happens now. Of course, in the Gulf region, this is more recurrent. You have lots of, many a man marrying many wives. Here in Lebanon, it happens, but it's not the case that maybe you will never see a man with two women. He might have two women, but living separately and in two different houses and like this. It's a different lifestyle here that implies different behavior.
Right. So finally, Hadi, I'm going to ask you to consult your crystal ball and try to predict what is going to unfold in Syria in the next year or two. We've discussed this with a number of people. I've made my view quite clear. I think it's going to be extremely difficult for anybody to assert control over even most of Syria, let alone all of Syria, that there is going to be a tremendous amount of instability, and that there is a very significant risk that the country is going to descend into chaos, which could come back to haunt considerably the Israelis, the Americans, and the Turks. I just don't see any realistic prospect of this situation being stabilized in the near term or even in the medium term. What is your view on the ground where you are about the likely prospects for Syria in the next couple of years?
Actually, many Israeli former generals, experts, and journalists warned from this. And they mentioned that it's not necessary what happened in Syria, which is not in the favor of Hezbollah, but it might also not be in the favor of Israel completely, because now if an unrest and in any kind of chaos happened in Syria, and this is if we were in front of a Libyan case here in Syria, a Libyan scenario, the Israelis will have a bigger war front, a bigger front that is facing unrest, facing possible clashes, which means more danger, more threats to the security of Israel, the entity, and also which means more chances for the resistance and people allied with the resistance to carry out operations that maybe these operations weren't possible easily during even the Assad's regime. And they were up to some kind of calculations and political assessment.
Mm-hmm. Well, let us hope for the people of Syria who've suffered so much that they somehow find peace and stability in the months.
For all the region.
All the region, absolutely, Hadi. In any event, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, and hopefully we will see each other soon again in Lebanon.
I hope so.
I would like
and
to.
I hope that we will also, when you come here, that we will be able to go back to the border area, to Hula, to Shara, to Hayt al-Sha'ab, to witness how people are rebuilding their villages. Because yes, it's war, and war does not go according to calculations. But what we know is that the people of South Lebanon, and what you know because you witnessed how people of South Lebanon are, we know that these people will never surrender and will never accept occupation and humiliation.
Inshallah. Wonderful speaking to you again, Hadi. And
thank you. And excuse my English. It's sometimes it's my third language.
You did an admirable job with your third.
I hope so.
Thank you. And this is
Thank you for having me, Dimitri.
Thank you very much. And this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal for Reason to Resist on December 30th, 2024.